The ocean doesn't care who is crying in front of it. That thought runs through Evelyn Carter's mind as she sits alone in the back of a black Rolls-Royce, watching the storm swallow the California coastline. Her fingers are still wrapped around the wedding invitation. Heavy, cream-colored, expensive paper. A cruel symbol disguised as elegance. Inside it is Damian Whitmore's handwriting. I thought you should see what a real future looks like. Evelyn exhales slowly. Not shaky, not broken, just tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep. The driver clears his throat gently. Ma'am, we can still turn around. Evelyn doesn't answer immediately. Outside, the city lights blur through rain streaks sliding down the window. Billionaire estates glow in the distance like floating kingdoms. Somewhere out there, Damian is getting ready to marry another woman. A woman the world calls an upgrade. A younger face, a louder smile, a more marketable love story. Evelyn lowers her gaze to her hands. 7 years ago, those hands used to tremble in hospital waiting rooms. Needles, hormones, hope, failure. Repeat, over and over again until hope stopped feeling like hope. It started feeling like punishment. And Damian, at first, he was different. At first, she remembers him standing beside her in that cold fertility clinic hallway, squeezing her hand like she was still his future. We'll get through this, he told her. We will, he promised. But promises don't survive ego. Because slowly, something in him changed. The first shift was subtle. A pause too long before defending her. A silence where comfort should have been. Then came the comments. Not loud. Never loud at first. Just sharp enough to leave marks only she could feel. My mother is just emotional, he would say after every insult. You know how she is. But his mother didn't hide her contempt. Not even at Sunday dinners. Evelyn remembers one night perfectly. Crystal glasses clinking. Gold cutlery. A table full of people who pretended not to hear cruelty. And then the voice. 7 years, Evelyn. 7 years without a child. At some point a woman has to accept her place. Laughter followed. Soft. Polite. Deadly. Evelyn had looked at Damian that night. Waiting. Begging silently. Say something. Anything. But he only lifted his wine glass. As if silence was easier than protection. That was the night something inside her quietly cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just permanently. Back in the present, the driver glances at her again. They're saying this is the biggest wedding of the decade, he says carefully. Media everywhere. Billionaires flying in from Europe. Even senators attending. Evelyn gives a faint, almost invisible smile. I know. You still want to go in? A long pause. Then she speaks. Yes. Outside the car, the Whitmore Ocean Estate rises like a monument to power. White marble gates. Security checkpoints. Private guards scanning invitations like state documents. And beyond them, a world that once treated her like she didn't exist. Tonight, that world will look at her again. But differently. Across town, inside a penthouse dressing room, Damian Whitmore adjusts his cufflinks in front of a floor-to-ceiling mirror. Behind him, stylists rush around preparing him for the ceremony. He looks calm, controlled, successful, exactly how the world expects a billionaire to look. But his assistant hesitates near the door. Sir, your ex-wife confirmed attendance. Damian doesn't turn around. Good. The assistant pauses. She's actually coming alone. That finally makes Damian smile. Slow, cold, satisfied. Of course she is, he says. He turns slightly now, fixing his tie. She has no one left. The assistant shifts uncomfortably. Do you still want the media positioning for her arrival? We can. No. Damian interrupts. Then he looks at himself in the mirror. I want everyone to see her. A beat. Then quietly. I want them to see what happens when a woman fails her role. Far from that room. In a private aviation lounge, 3 small children sit on a soft white couch. Triplets. Identical eyes. Quiet energy. Carefully dressed like royalty without understanding why. One of them swings her legs. Mommy said she's going somewhere important today, she whispers. A nanny nearby smiles softly. Yes, sweetheart. The little girl tilts her head. Is it bad people? The question hangs in the air longer than expected. Before the nanny can answer, a calm voice comes from behind them. I wouldn't call them bad, Alexander Vale says. The children turn. Their father. He watches them for a moment, then lowers himself to their level. Sometimes, he says carefully, grown-ups forget how to be kind when they're trying to win. One of the boys frowns. Win what? Alexander pauses. Everything. A silence follows. Then one of the girls asks softly, "Is mommy okay?" Alexander's expression changes slightly. Not fear. Not doubt. Something more controlled. "Your mother is stronger than anyone in that room tonight," he says. Then he adds, "She just hasn't reminded them yet." Back at the estate, the wedding is beginning to fill. Laughter. Music. Glasses clinking like tiny bells of celebration. Influencers live stream from gold-trimmed balconies. "This is insane," one says into a camera. "We're at the Whitmore wedding." Billionaire Damian Whitmore is literally. She stops mid-sentence. Because something shifts at the entrance. Security straightens. Whispers spread. Heads turn. Evelyn Carter has arrived. She steps out of the car slowly. No hesitation. No performance. Just presence. The kind that doesn't ask for attention. It takes it. Her black gown moves quietly with the wind. Minimal jewelry. Clean elegance. No desperate attempt to impress anyone. And yet, every camera turns toward her instantly. Reporters rush forward. "Evelyn, is it true you and Damian ended on bad terms? Do you regret the marriage? Are you here to stop the wedding?" Flashes explode around her. But Evelyn doesn't flinch. She simply walks forward. Each step steady. Each step heavier than the last 7 years of her life. Inside the ballroom, Damian hears the shift before he sees her. A ripple. A change in sound. Then someone near the door whispers, "She's here." Damian smiles without looking. Let her in. But when he finally turns, he stops. For half a second, the smile doesn't fade. It freezes. Because Evelyn doesn't look like what he expected. No broken posture. No desperate sadness. No defeat. She looks composed. Dangerously composed. Like someone who has already survived the worst part of the story. Isabella notices immediately. "That's her," she whispers. Damian forces a laugh. "She came dressed for attention," he says loudly enough for others to hear. A few guests chuckle nervously. Damian raises his glass slightly. "Well," he says, walking forward a step, "I appreciate you accepting the invitation." Evelyn stops. The room quiets. He continues, voice smooth but sharp underneath. "I wasn't sure you'd want to witness this moment." A pause. Then he adds, "But I suppose closure is important." Some guests shift uncomfortably. Because something about this doesn't feel like closure. It feels like a performance waiting for its final act. Evelyn looks at him for a long moment. Then she speaks quietly. "You always did enjoy an audience, Damian." A flicker crosses his expression. Before he can respond, she adds, "I just didn't realize I was part of the show." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Isabella tightens her grip on Damian's arm. Damian smiles again, but it's thinner now. "Still sharp," he says. Then softly, "Even after everything." Evelyn's gaze doesn't move. "No," she replies calmly. "I became sharper after everything." A beat. Then she looks past him, toward the glass walls, toward the ocean, toward something far beyond this room. And she says something almost too soft to hear. Truth has a habit of arriving when people stop expecting it. Damian frowns slightly. "What did you say?" But Evelyn is already walking forward. Not toward him. Past him. Into the heart of the wedding. And somewhere far above the coastline, a private jet begins its final descent through storm clouds. But for now, no one inside that ballroom hears it yet. Not the guests. Not the bride. Not the billionaire who believes he has already won. And definitely not Damian Whitmore, who is about to learn that some invitations don't bring closure. They bring consequences. The ballroom doesn't return to normal after Evelyn walks past. It pretends to. But something has already changed in the air. Laughter feels slightly forced now. Glasses clink a little softer. Even the music from the string orchestra seems too bright for the tension no one wants to name. Damian notices it, and it irritates him. Because this was not how it was supposed to feel. Evelyn was supposed to arrive broken. Quiet. Smaller. A reminder of what happens when a woman fails her role, as he once told his board of investors. Instead, she walked in like she owned something no one can see yet. Damian turns slightly toward Isabella. "She's just here for attention," he says under his breath. Isabella forces a smile. "But why does it feel like everyone is watching her instead of us?" Damian doesn't answer immediately, because he doesn't like that question. So he does what he always does when he feels control slipping. He performs. He steps onto the small raised platform at the center of the ballroom and raises his glass again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, voice warm and practiced. Tonight is about new beginnings. Polite applause returns. A reset. Damian continues. And sometimes, he adds, smiling slightly, new beginnings require us to close old chapters properly. A few guests glance toward Evelyn. She is standing near the glass wall overlooking the ocean, unmoving. Listening, not reacting. Damian continues. I want to thank everyone who supported me through difficult years. The word difficult hangs in the air like a carefully chosen weapon. And I wish nothing but peace to those who were part of my past. A few sympathetic nods. This is the version of the story everyone already believes. The billionaire husband who tried everything. The wife who couldn't give him children. The quiet ending that society accepts without question. But then, from the far corner of the ballroom, a man steps forward. Uninvited. Calm. Composed. Alexander Vale. The room subtly shifts again. People recognize him instantly. Not because he seeks attention, but because people like him don't enter rooms unless something important is about to happen. Damian's smile tightens. And you are? He asks loudly. Alexander doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he looks around the room once. Slowly, measuring everything. Then he speaks. I'm someone who dislikes false narratives. A murmur spreads. Damian laughs lightly. False narratives? Alexander finally looks directly at him. Yes. A pause. Then, and tonight, you are building one in real time. The room goes quiet. Isabella stiffens. Damian's jaw tightens slightly. This is a private event, Damian says. Alexander nods. I'm aware. Then he adds calmly. That's why what happens next will be very public. A shift. Not loud, but felt. Evelyn finally turns slightly toward them. Not surprised. As if she was expecting this moment. Damian notices. And for the first time tonight, a small crack appears in his confidence. Evelyn, he calls out, forcing control back into his voice. Is this your guest? She looks at him. Yes, she says simply. Damian scoffs. Interesting choice. Then he steps closer, lowering his voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. You always did choose complicated men after me. A few uncomfortable laughs. But Alexander steps forward slightly. No, he says calmly. She chose survival. That silence lands harder than any insult. Damian's smile fades for half a second, then returns sharper. You know nothing about our history, he says. Alexander tilts his head slightly. Actually, he replies, I know more than you think. A pause. The room tightens. Damian studies him. Something about Alexander feels wrong. Not threatening. Not loud. Worse. Certain. Damian turns slightly toward his security team. A silent signal. But Alexander continues before anything can escalate. You invited her here to humiliate her, he says calmly. But you made one mistake. Damian's eyes narrow. And what mistake is that? Alexander glances briefly toward Evelyn. You assumed she was still the same person you destroyed. A beat. Then, the ballroom lights flicker. Not dramatically, just enough for people to notice. A server rushes to the side, whispering into a headset. Something is happening outside, but no one knows what yet. Damian ignores it, because his attention is locked on Alexander now. Listen, Damian says sharply. Whatever game you think you're playing, this is my wedding. Alexander nods slightly. Yes, he says, then adds. And that is exactly why this truth will hurt so much. Damian laughs once. Cold. Truth. He turns toward Evelyn. Let's talk about truth then. He gestures toward her. This is a woman who spent 7 years failing to give me a family. A few guests shift uncomfortably. Damian continues louder now, feeding off the audience. 7 years of doctors, specialists, tests, and every result pointed to one thing. He pauses, then delivers it like a final verdict. She was infertile. The word drops heavily into the room. A few people nod. Some whisper. It's the story they already know. The story that was sold to them. Damian turns slightly satisfied, but Alexander exhales slowly, almost disappointed. You really believe that? Alexander says quietly. Damian snaps his attention back. Excuse me. Alexander steps forward one more time. You didn't fail to have children because of her. A pause. Then, calmly. You failed because you altered her medical reality. The room freezes. Even the music seems to hesitate. Damian's expression changes instantly. Not anger yet. Something sharper. Warning. What did you just say? Alexander doesn't flinch. I said, he repeats slowly. You bribed a fertility specialist to falsify medical reports. A ripple goes through the guests. Phones lower. Whispers rise. Isabella's hand tightens around her champagne glass. That's insane, Damian says quickly, forcing a laugh. This man is clearly delusional. But Alexander continues. Dr. Marcus Heller, he says calmly. That name lands differently. Damian's smile flickers. Just slightly. Alexander watches him carefully. You paid him to rewrite your results, he continues. Because the truth would have destroyed your image. Now the room is no longer listening to Damian. It's listening to Alexander. Damian steps forward aggressively. You have no proof. Alexander nods once. I do. A pause. Then he adds. And so does she. All eyes shift to Evelyn. For the first time tonight. She moves. Slowly. From the glass wall. Toward the center of the room. Each step changes the atmosphere. Because now this is no longer a confrontation. It is becoming a reckoning. Damian's voice lowers. Evelyn, he says, trying to regain control. Don't do this. She stops. Looks at him. And speaks softly. I didn't come here to argue, Damian. A pause. I came here because you invited me to witness your version of the truth. Her eyes harden slightly. So I brought mine. A beat. Somewhere outside the ballroom. A distant roar begins to build. Low at first. Almost like thunder. But growing closer. Damian doesn't notice yet. Because his focus is now entirely on Evelyn. You're still trying to destroy me after everything, he says. Evelyn shakes her head slightly. No, she replies. I stopped trying to destroy you a long time ago. A pause. Then she adds quietly. You did that part yourself. And at that exact moment, the sound outside intensifies. Security radios start crackling. Guests near the windows turn toward the ocean. Something is coming. Fast. Damian finally hears it. He turns slightly. What is that? No one answers immediately. Because across the coastline, a private jet is breaking through the storm clouds and preparing to land directly into the center of his perfect night. The sound outside is no longer subtle. It is unmistakable now. A deep, growing roar that rolls across the ocean like thunder that has decided to land. Inside the ballroom, conversations begin to break apart. People turn toward the glass walls. Security officers start speaking into earpieces. Something is wrong. Damian Whitmore feels it, but refuses to show it. Not yet. Instead, he forces a laugh. It's probably just another celebrity arrival, he says loudly, waving a hand dismissively. This is California. Everyone wants attention. A few guests laugh nervously, but the laughter doesn't fully land. Because the sound outside is getting closer and lower and heavier. Like something massive is descending directly toward them. Evelyn stands still in the center of the room, unshaken, watching. Damian notices her calmness again, and it irritates him more than anything else tonight. You planned this, he asks sharply. Evelyn tilts her head slightly. I didn't plan anything, she says softly. Then adds, I was invited, remember? That line lands quietly, but sharply, because it reminds everyone, Damian brought her here. Not for closure. For humiliation. But now the room is beginning to feel something else entirely. Uncertainty. Alexander steps slightly closer to Evelyn, his voice low. It's time, he says. Evelyn exhales once, then nods. Damian catches that exchange. His stomach tightens slightly. What is going on, he demands. No answer. Only the sound outside growing louder. Security rushes toward the entrance doors. One of the guards speaks urgently into his radio. We have an unscheduled air descent approaching the private airstrip. No clearance was filed. Another voice responds. Confirm identification. Static. Then, stand by. The guests begin murmuring now. Phones rise again. Live streams continue. Because everyone senses it. Something historic is about to happen. Damian moves toward the nearest window. And for the first time tonight, he looks uncertain. Far above the coastline, the storm clouds split open. And through them, a sleek private jet emerges. Black, silent, controlled. Not the kind of aircraft used for spectacle. The kind used for authority. The kind that does not ask for permission. The kind that arrives when everything else has already been decided. Inside the ballroom, someone whispers, That's not on the guest list. Another voice. It's landing here. The jet begins its descent toward the estate's private airstrip, located just beyond the ocean terrace. A runway Damian personally funded for VIP arrivals. A runway he believed represented control. But now, It is being used for something else entirely. Damian steps back from the window. His voice lowers. Who authorized that aircraft? No answer. His assistant rushes in, panicked. Sir, we tried to stop it, but the aircraft has diplomatic clearance codes we can't override. Whose codes? Damian snaps. The assistant hesitates. Carter Global Aviation. Silence. Silence. That name lands differently. Some guests recognize it. Others don't. But Evelyn does not react. Because she already knew. Damian turns slowly toward her. What did you do? He asks, voice controlled, but thinner now. Evelyn looks at him calmly. I didn't do anything. A pause. Then, I rebuilt what you tried to erase. The jet lowers further. The wind outside begins shaking the glass walls. The chandeliers tremble slightly. Guests step back instinctively. And then, the aircraft touches down. Perfectly. Precisely. No chaos. No noise beyond what is necessary. Control. Absolute control. A few seconds pass. Then, the jet door opens. A staircase extends. And the first figure steps out. Alexander Vale. The room reacts immediately. Whispers explode. That's Alexander Vale. The aviation billionaire. What is he doing here? Damian's expression tightens. Because this is no longer random. This is coordinated. Alexander pauses at the base of the stairs. Then gestures upward. And the second figure appears. Evelyn Carter. But not the Evelyn they expected. She descends slowly. Gracefully. Like someone stepping back into a world that once tried to bury her. And behind her, 3 small figures appear. Triplets. Holding hands. Walking carefully down the stairs. The ballroom inside goes completely silent. Not gradually. Instantly. Silence, so sharp it feels physical. Damian stares. Unmoving. His mind trying to process what his eyes are seeing. Isabella steps back slightly. No, she whispers. But Evelyn is already walking forward now. Through the terrace doors. Into the ballroom. The doors open automatically as security freezes in place. No one stops her. No one can. Because the energy in the room has shifted. Authority has changed hands. Evelyn enters first. Then Alexander. Then the children. And the moment the triplets step inside, everything breaks. Whispers explode everywhere. Oh my God. Are those her kids? I thought she couldn't have children. Phones tilt. Livestream comments flood instantly. Reporters scramble to adjust cameras. Damian finally finds his voice. This is a setup, he says loudly. This is illegal trespassing. But his voice cracks slightly at the end. Because he knows. Something is wrong. Alexander steps forward. Calm. Controlled. I wouldn't call it trespassing, he says. Then looks around the room. I would call it correction. Damian's eyes flicker to Evelyn. This is your doing. He says again, more desperate now. Evelyn stops. Looks at him. And for the first time tonight, she smiles slightly. Not warmly. Not kindly. Just finally. You brought me here to humiliate me, she says softly. A pause. But you forgot something important. Damian's jaw tightens. What? Evelyn glances down at the children. Then back at him. You never asked if I survived it. A beat. The room holds its breath. Then she continues. You told the world I was infertile. A step closer. You paid doctors. You bought reports. You controlled narratives. Another step. But you never controlled the truth. Damian shakes his head. This is impossible. Alexander speaks again. Medical records from Geneva, he says calmly. Authenticated. Independent verification. DNA confirmation. A pause. Then the final blow. You were the infertile one, Damian. The words drop like a collapsing building. For a moment. No sound. No reaction. Just stillness. Damian stares at him. Then at Evelyn. Then at the children. Something inside him starts to fracture. No, he says quietly. No, that's not. But his voice fades. Because one of the children steps forward slightly. A small girl. She tilts her head and looks at him with innocent curiosity. Mommy, she says softly. Is that the man you told us about? Evelyn doesn't take her eyes off Damian. Yes, she says. The girl nods slowly. Then asks the question that breaks the room completely. Why is he sad? Silence. Complete. Absolute. And for the first time, Damian Whitmore has no answer. For the first time in his life, Damian Whitmore is not in control of the room. But he still tries. That instinct doesn't die easily. It fights. It claws. It lies. This is staged, he says suddenly. Louder now. turning toward the guests as if they are still on his side. This is some kind of coordinated attack on my reputation. A few guests shift uneasily, because reputation is something everyone in that room understands. And fears. Damian continues, voice sharpening again. She's my ex-wife. She has motive. This man, he points at Alexander, is clearly using her to execute a business attack. He laughs once. Forced. This is emotional manipulation dressed as justice. For a brief moment. It almost works. A few people hesitate. A few phones lower. Because wealthy rooms are built on doubt and image control. And Damian has always known how to weaponize that. Evelyn watches him carefully. Not reacting yet. Not interrupting. Because this is the part where men like him always reveal themselves. Damian steps forward, regaining momentum. I won't allow my wedding to be turned into a spectacle, he says firmly. Security, remove them. Two guards glance at each other. They don't move. Not because they disagree. Because they are unsure who they are allowed to obey right now. That hesitation is new. Damian notices it immediately. His jaw tightens. Do you know who I am? He snaps. Still no movement. The silence grows heavier. And then, a new voice cuts through the tension. Calm. Controlled. From the side of the room, a woman steps forward holding a thin black folder. Dr. Elena Marlowe, International Medical Compliance Investigator. Few people recognize her, but the ones who do go quiet instantly. Because she does not enter rooms like this unless everything is already documented. Alexander nods slightly toward her. Now we confirm it, he says. Damian's eyes narrow. No, he says quickly. You don't get to bring in more actors. Elena opens the folder and speaks clearly. Damian Whitmore, she says, this is a certified medical audit from 3 independent fertility institutes across Switzerland and Germany. A pause. She turns a page. Your ex-wife was misdiagnosed based on falsified data. Another page. The alteration was traced to a paid intervention involving your private physician at the time. Damian's expression begins to shift. Not anger now. Something colder. Something defensive. That's not possible, he says again, but quieter. Elena continues. And this is the corrected medical conclusion. She looks up. You were the infertile party. A silence, so deep it feels like pressure. Some guests step back instinctively. Others whisper. Because truth in rooms like this doesn't just change stories. It destroys status. Damian shakes his head slowly. No, he says again, but weaker now. No, she's lying. But no one echoes him. Because the evidence is being displayed on a projection screen now, cast from Alexander's team. Hospital records, test results, audit trails, financial transfers, communication logs. All visible, all undeniable. Damian stares at the screen like it is speaking a language he refuses to accept. His breathing changes slightly. Shorter, tighter. Isabella finally lets go of his arm. Damian, she whispers. But he doesn't hear her properly anymore. Because another realization is forming. Not the truth about fertility. Something worse. The collapse of everything built on the lie. He looks at Evelyn again. For the first time, not as an object, not as a failure, but as a mirror. You knew? He says quietly. Evelyn nods. Yes. A pause. Damian's voice drops. All this time, Evelyn's expression doesn't change. I found out in Geneva, she says calmly. 2 years after you left me. A beat. And by then, she adds, you had already rewritten my entire life for me. Damian takes a step back. Just one. Like the floor has shifted. No, he says again, but this time it sounds lost. I didn't. I was protecting myself. Alexander cuts in immediately. You destroyed her to protect your ego, he says flatly. There is a difference. That lands. Hard. Damian's breathing becomes uneven now. Around him, the room has changed completely. Whispers are no longer curious. They are judgmental. Phones are no longer recording celebration. They are recording downfall. The billionaire is no longer the hero of the night. He is the subject of it. And Damian realizes something terrifying. There is no longer an audience to impress. Only witnesses. He turns sharply towards security again. Get them out, he orders. This time, one guard hesitates longer. Then quietly says, Sir, we've received a direct override from the estate trustees. Damian freezes. What? The guard swallows. The estate is no longer under your sole operational control. That sentence hits differently. Damian stares at him. Explain. But before anyone can answer, A notification flashes on the main screen behind the altar. Live legal update. Whitmore Holdings emergency review initiated. Damian turns slowly. No. Another update appears. Board vote in progress. Then another. Asset freeze under review. The room erupts into murmurs again. What's happening? Is he losing control of the company? Is this real? Damian steps forward aggressively. This is sabotage, he yells. This is an illegal corporate attack. But his voice is no longer commanding. It's unstable, because now even his own foundation is shaking beneath him. Evelyn watches him carefully, not smiling, not celebrating, just observing the collapse of a man who once believed he was untouchable. Then she speaks quietly. You taught me something, Damian. He looks at her sharply. What? Evelyn steps forward slightly. That power built on lies doesn't fall quickly. A pause. It collapses all at once. A distant sound echoes outside again. Another aircraft, but smaller, closer. Security rushes to the doors again. A new message comes through the radios. Emergency arrival, legal enforcement, and corporate trustees on site. Damian's face changes. Now he understands. This is not just emotional, not just personal. This is structural. The consequences have arrived. And then, the ballroom doors open again. But this time, it is not guests. It is not media. It is accountability. And Damian Whitmore finally understands what fear feels like. When there is nowhere left to hide. The ballroom no longer feels like a wedding hall. It feels like a courtroom. No music. No laughter. No champagne being poured. Just silence. Heavy and irreversible. Damian Whitmore stands in the center of it all, frozen between what he used to be and what he is becoming in real time. Because the doors are open now, and people are walking in. Not guests. Not spectators. Accountability. 3 corporate trustees in dark suits. 2 legal representatives. And a federal compliance officer holding sealed documents. The kind of arrival that does not ask for permission. The kind that ends eras. Damian's voice finally breaks the silence. This is a private event, he says again, but weaker now. You cannot just. One of the trustees raises a hand calmly. Mr. Whitmore, he interrupts. This event is no longer under your jurisdiction. A pause. Then the final words. The Whitmore Holdings Board has voted to suspend your executive authority effective immediately. The room reacts instantly. Gasps. Whispers. Phones shaking. Damian stares at him. No, he says quietly. That's not possible. I built this company. The trustee nods. Yes, he replies. Then adds. And you nearly destroyed it. Silence again. But this silence is different. It is final. Damian turns slowly toward the guests, searching for something, anything, that still belongs to him. But what he sees now is not admiration. It is distance, shock, disappointment, judgment, and worst of all, indifference. Because billionaires do not fall because of enemies. They fall when belief disappears. Isabella steps back fully now, removing her hand from him completely. I can't be part of this, she whispers. Damian turns sharply. Isabella. But she shakes her head. You lied to me, she says quietly. About her. About everything. Then she walks away. Just like that. No dramatic exit. No tears. Just departure. And that somehow hurts more. Damian looks around again, desperate now. And finally his eyes land on Evelyn. She is still standing there. Calm. Unmoved. Holding the hand of one of the triplets. Not as a guest anymore, but as the center of gravity in the room. Damian's voice drops. This was revenge, he says. Evelyn studies him for a long moment, then answers softly. No. A pause. I didn't come here to destroy you. Damian laughs once, but it cracks halfway. Then what is this? Evelyn looks at him directly now. This is truth, she says. And truth doesn't need permission. A beat. Then she steps forward one last time. Close enough now that only he hears her next words. I spent years believing I was broken, she says quietly. Damian doesn't respond. I spent years apologizing for something you created, she continues. Her voice stays steady. But the worst part wasn't what you did to me. A pause. It was what you made me believe about myself. That lands deeper than any legal document. Because Damian finally understands. This was never just about children. It was about identity. About erasure. About rewriting a woman's entire sense of worth. Evelyn steps back slightly. And now, she says, you get to live with the truth you avoided. A long silence. Then, one of the triplets looks at Damian again. Curious. Not afraid. Just honest. Mommy, the child asks softly, is he still sad? Evelyn looks down at her child. Yes, she says gently. Then adds, but that's something he has to learn to carry. Damian hears that, and something inside him finally stops fighting. Not because he agrees, but because there is nothing left to fight with. The trustees begin the final formalities. Documents are signed, access revoked, systems transferred, and Damian Whitmore, the billionaire who once controlled empires with a signature, stands powerless as his world is quietly reassigned in front of him. No violence, no shouting, just closure. As the process unfolds, Alexander steps closer to Evelyn. His voice is low. It's over, he says. Evelyn nods slightly. I know. He glances at the children. They're safe. Evelyn looks at them too. Yes, she whispers. Then she exhales, slowly, for what feels like the first time in years without weight on her chest. Not happiness. Not victory. Peace. Finally, the ballroom begins to empty slowly. Guests leaving in silence rather than celebration. Phones still recording, but no one's sure what to say anymore. Because stories like this don't get loud endings. They get quiet endings. Damian remains standing alone near the center of the room. Everything he built still exists, but none of it belongs to him anymore. Evelyn walks toward the exit with her children, then pauses briefly at the doorway. She doesn't turn around. She doesn't need to, but she says one final line. Soft, controlled, final. I hope one day you understand that love was never your weakness. A pause. It was your choice. Then she leaves. And this time, she is not disappearing. She is walking forward. Outside, the night air is calm now. The storm is gone. The private jet waits under soft runway lights. Alexander opens the door for her. The children climb in first, laughing quietly again. Evelyn pauses before entering. She looks up at the sky, not as someone who survived something, but as someone who outgrew it. Then she steps inside. The door closes, and the jet begins to move. Inside the ballroom, Damian Whitmore is left alone. No cameras, no applause, no empire, just silence, and the truth. And for the first time in his life, he understands that losing everything is not the punishment. Remembering what you destroyed is. End.